Words proposed to be omitted stand part of the question, and I give the call to the member for Dunkley.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. As we all know, in 2020, Australians are living through a global pandemic. They're also living through the reality of the worst national account figures since the 1930s. And like across the country, people in my community of Dunkley are feeling the economic impacts, there is no doubt, and also the mental health and other impacts of the restrictions that we are living through in order to save lives and suppress the virus. So there is no doubt that reviving economic growth and creating jobs are critical challenges facing Australia's leaders and will be for many years to come. But as we imagine a post-COVID or COVID normal Australia, whatever they may be, I think we also need to ask ourselves, are the traditional measures of national income, such as GDP, sufficient indicators of our progress? I don't believe that they are, because as economist Simon Kuznets said, the welfare of a nation can scarcely be inferred from a measurement of national income. In a speech to the University of Kansas back in 1938, Senator Robert Kennedy noted that the gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play. It does not include the beauty of our poetry or the strength of our marriages, the intelligence of our public debate, or the integrity of our public officials. It measures neither our wit nor our courage, neither our wisdom nor our learning, neither our compassion nor our devotion to our country. It measures everything, in short, except that which makes life worthwhile. So while economic prosperity, fairly shared, must play a central role in our national agenda, in order for Australia and Australians to truly thrive, that economic prosperity should be embedded in a larger story of well-being, a story of people and of communities, a story of the places that we live in and that we love. Reflecting on the way in which my constituents in Dunkley have responded to the challenges of 2020 and the issues that they have asked me as their federal member to champion in this place, they describe to me social connectedness, opportunities to participate in community, equitable access to physical and mental health support, employment and education, and the preservation of our local environment as part of our national and global environment. There is no doubt that people in my community care about economic growth, but they care about a lot more as well. Now, in July of this year, which simultaneously seems like not very long time ago and approximately 20 years ago, more than 70 locals responded to an open invitation that I put out on Facebook to attend a virtual Charities and Community Groups forum. At the start of this forum, there was some discussion about the dearth of government funding and support for individual groups and projects at all levels of government, it must be said. But very quickly, the participants themselves drove the conversation towards how they could work together to deliver programs and resources for those in our community who find themselves isolated or disadvantaged. And rather than pushing their own barrels, our charities in Frankston and Carrum Downs and Langwarrin and Mount Eliza, in all of the suburbs in Dunkley, our community groups, the sporting groups that participated, art societies who were there, they all wanted to explore with each other what they could do together, because they knew that together they could achieve what none of them could ever hope to do alone. So as I speak today on this appropriations bill, on the budget that the government has handed down in this historic year, the message I want to bring foremost to the debate from my community is that we genuinely are all in this together. And now is not the time in our nation's journey for piecemeal or short-sighted or divisive leadership. Now is the time to do what we need to do to get through the crisis we're facing, but to also step back for a moment, reflect, because we can grow not only wealthy again, but we can also grow wise and well by working together towards the future we want. In that spirit, I want to put forward a number of suggestions that I would ask the government to look at and consider as they move forward over the next 12 months. And some of them we know the government won't accept, but I will continue to put them. And others I put forward as ideas that I think are worthy of consideration. So rather than taking this opportunity to attack the government, I want to take this opportunity to say, here are some things on behalf of my community I would like you to consider. Having had a forum with childcare workers in Victoria, I would like the government to consider restoring JobKeeper to Victorian childcare workers and to help that very female-dominated industry, the workers and the people who run the centres, to be able to continue to function. I would like the government to look at what is happening to Victorian businesses in particular and keep JobKeeper at its initial level through this second wave and as we come out of it. And we do know that in the same 2 weeks that the level of JobKeeper was cut, there were 110,000 jobs lost across Australia, in every state and territory, not just in Victoria. But we also know that we are doing it hard in Victoria because we have a second wave that we have had to deal with. I would like the government to do more than lean into the idea that Newstart can't go back to $40 a day at December, and actually to commit to a long-term increase to unemployment benefits that is above the poverty line. Not just because so many more people will be relying on unemployment benefits, sadly, over the next 12 months, but also because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do to help people to be able to function as they're looking for work, and to help people to be able to look after their families as they're looking for work. I would like the government to look at travel agents and the travel industry. The travel agents in my community who participated in a Zoom forum with me last week, it's not their fault that international borders have been closed as they had to be closed. It's not their fault that the COVID virus appears to be raging around most of the rest of the world who haven't had the same success as Victoria in suppressing a second wave. It's not their fault that not only are they devastated now, but they can't see where their income is going to come in the next 12 months. So they do need some targeted assistance because they tell me that the measures in the budget aren't going to assist them. I would like the government to look at how to provide more support for workers over the age of 35 who were either unemployed before the pandemic, but particularly the almost 1 million workers over the age of, I think it's 45, who have lost their jobs during the pandemic, get back into work. The Restart program, well-intentioned, but it is not working and hasn't been working to help older workers find long-term secure work. And there is more and more evidence coming out about if you lose your job over the age of 50, it is almost impossible to find another job. And that is wrong for people, but it's also wrong for our economy that people who are sometimes in the prime of their working life are on the scrap heap. So I would like the government to work more towards doing that. I'd like the government to build on the things that it started to do recently to help more Australians to come home who have found themselves stranded overseas because of border closures. I would like the government to look at some of the policies that Anthony Albanese announced in his budget reply speech, including about, importantly, rewiring the electricity grid so that we can genuinely become a renewable superpower and that our electricity grid can be the NBN of energy and be fit for purpose for this century and as we go forward. And it would be remiss of me not to, on behalf of the many constituents who have contacted me about their experiences in aged care before the pandemic and now, or their parents' experience in aged care, ask the government to look at investing more money into that system, but also doing more than just investing more money, really looking at how we can fix that broken system. And it's a system that has been undermined for many years, but the government has the opportunity now to do something about it, and I respectfully request that they do more about it. And there's 100,000 people who are waiting for home care packages, and if we can keep people at home for as long as possible, that is absolutely in theirs and their families' best interests. Affordable childcare is an economic stimulus investment. It's about productivity. It's about more women being able to be in the workforce. It's also about something that I don't think has been spoken about very much yet in the national conversation. And I can anecdotally point to my friends and say affordable childcare and allowing women to go back to work more days a week is also about helping women's careers progress, because often women's careers are stunted for a period of time when they have young children because their colleagues are working full-time and they're not able to. It's also a very good measure to stimulate our economy. It's about disposable income, and the Grattan Institute has put out a report that I think is very important to look at. This is also an opportunity because people are now talking about our arts and culture industries and the over $100 billion that it contributes to the economy every year because they've been hit so badly by the pandemic, to look at developing an arts and culture strategy and policy for this country, not just for now but for the future. So for the Arts Minister to grab this opportunity and develop a new form of Paul Keating's Creative Nation, and to really support Australian voices and faces and talent in this country as we go forward. I would like to see a greater investment in homelessness services and social housing, and I'm on a House of Representatives committee looking at this with the Deputy Chair, and there is a real, I think, bipartisan willingness to acknowledge the significant problem and to acknowledge that work needs to be done going forward. And we've handed down an interim report that I know the Minister will look at, and I urge the government to reconsider and direct investment in fixing and building social housing as one of the things out of that. Everyone knows that I talk about women's health a lot, and in particular breast cancer, because of my personal experience. We know that coming out of this pandemic there is going to be a greater burden on our health system because of the number of people who haven't accessed treatment, testing, even just going to their local GP, because either those services haven't been available or they've been scared to go because of COVID. The Breast Cancer Network of Australia is really concerned about the number of women who will find themselves diagnosed with a breast cancer in the next 12 months that should have been caught earlier, and the need for more services such as palliative care. So I urge the government to be looking at that, and the Health Minister to be looking at that as well. I urge the government to rethink its position on universities. I know this is a politically contested space, but I'm the daughter of a university lecturer after he's a public school teacher who was the head of School of Education at Charles Sturt University in country New South Wales. And my father wouldn't forgive me if I didn't take this opportunity to say that people like my father are very concerned about the equity of children from poorer communities being able to go to university because they face leaving with a massive debt. And it was a long time ago now, but I know friends of mine that I went to Coringal High School with in Wagga Wagga didn't do their chosen subject then because their parents couldn't afford to support them. I can't imagine what they would think now facing a $58,000 debt when they leave university, for example. We know we have a shortage at the moment, unbelievably in this country, of nurses, welders, bricklayers, engineers and hairdressers. We urgently need skilling up in those areas. We urgently need some reforms to our democracy and our processes. The Uluru Statement to the Heart and an Indigenous voice to Parliament. I would ask the government to look at reforms such as 4-year terms. Australia needs to become a republic. And of course, the fledgling green shoots of improved trust in politicians and government that we've seen during the COVID crisis, because governments have taken decisions based on experts and scientists and medical advice, and in the majority of instances and broadly, not for political interests. We need to tender those green shoots. We need to fertilise them. We need to help them grow into trees. Integrity commissions and parliamentary standards, they're important, and I ask the government to look at them as well.
I thank the member for her contribution.